Streaming from Oklahoma's own digital studio, this is Dave Davis with Your Money Matters.
We're back again for another Your Money Matters Monday. Got to say that 5 times fast here at the digital studio. I'm Dave Davis. Thanks for being here again. You know, last week we talked about with Steve Wyatt, Chief Investment Officer at BOK Financial, about everything going on with tariffs and inflation. And so part of our format that we're going to be doing is a different topic, ideally weekly, is how we're going to start off. And this topic today is something I'm really excited about and something that has been used more and more recently. You've seen it, even if you don't know what it is. Buy now, pay later, BNPLs. This can be Klarna, this can be Afterpay. There's a lot of different brands, but basically, if you're on that favorite shopping site of yours, I'm not going to do, buzz marketing, but Amazon, whatever, you can say, okay, would you like to pay in 4 easy payments? And it'll be a little thing at the bottom. Maybe you've clicked on it before, didn't know what it was. Affirm is another name brand. And then we're going to explain what they are, how they're used, how different generations are using them, if people regret it or not, the kinds of things that they use BNPLs and that we all use, buy now, pay later, or a lot of us use buy now, pay later because it's become increasingly popular. So bringing in right now is my guest. This is going to be Ted Rossman, the Senior Finance Analyst with Bankrate. Ted, good morning.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So Ted, I'm really interested to know about these because I first started seeing them kind of pop up on my Amazon order. Not really sure what these are. Tell us about kind of the evolution of BNPLs.
This is a group of services that started mostly as 4 interest-free payments over 6 weeks. And a lot of these providers are about 10 years old, but it really caught on during the pandemic. E-commerce is a big focus. What's interesting is some of the shifts that are going on. So it used to be 4 interest-free payments over 6 weeks, and it used to be primarily online. We've seen a couple of evolutions. One is that it's moved into the physical world. So companies like Affirm, Klarna, Afterpay, they now have physical payment cards that you can use at the grocery store and the gas station and other places. So it's not just e-commerce. The other thing is that a lot of these plans are lasting longer nowadays. It's not just 6 weeks. Maybe it's 6 months, or maybe it's a year, maybe it's even a few years. A lot of those longer plans, anything longer than 6 weeks, often charges an interest rate. Maybe it's 15%, 20%, sometimes even more. I find it a bit ironic that an industry that portrayed itself as the anti-credit card or the kinder, gentler financing method is becoming more credit card-like over time.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? And in your article that you sent us, and I wanted to just highlight this because I thought this was so cool. This is just straight from the article. So at the end it says, and we're going to get to the stuff before additionally, but the end of it says, additionally, 22% of BNPL users say they choose to use BNPL because it feels more responsible than using a credit card. Why do you think people think that? Why is that?
It feels more responsible to some people because there's built-in light at the end of the tunnel. In other words, you know exactly how much you owe for exactly how long. Maybe it's 6 monthly payments of $100 a piece, something like that. There's a fixed end date. Whereas with a credit card, minimum payments can drag on forever and ever. The minimum payment formula for a credit card might be 1% of the balance plus interest. And the average credit card debtor could be in debt for decades. So people like the installments of buy now, pay later, and they like the ability to spread out their cash flow in a predictable sort of way.
Interesting. And as we referenced to, there's a lot of different reasons and a lot of different ways that people use it. I put together just some highlights from this very extensive article that you had sent out. So 49% report having a money problem, at least one financial issue with these services. And we're not talking about like a technical issue, right? Like this didn't go through. We're talking about financial issues that came as a result basically of borrowing money.
That's right. Yep. We're talking about overspending. We're talking about missing a payment, regretting a purchase, having trouble with returns and refunds. These are the most common pain points. The overspending one is the most significant. And that's because sometimes we trick ourselves. It's kind of like an infomercial, right? It's not a $200 purchase anymore. It's just 4 easy payments of $49.99. I mean, that's the kind of thing that sometimes you can trick yourself and you spend more than you realize. It's confusing too. You may have multiple plans running at the same time, maybe even with different providers. These are some of the things that get people into trouble. Even if it's $20 here and $50 there, sometimes we overdo it.
Right. And another thing that I thought was interesting is, and maybe not surprising, but it's just worth noting in terms of users. So tell us, Gen Z, biggest users of BNPL, would that be accurate?
That's right. Yeah, age 40 or so is a big tipping point. Generally speaking, it's younger people who use buy now, pay later. Gen Z leads the way, millennials not too far behind, and then there's a big drop off for Gen X and boomers. The conventional wisdom has been that buy now, pay later has been for young people without much of a credit history and without much income. That's still mostly true. The income part is actually starting to evolve. We're actually seeing more higher and middle income households using buy now, pay later, but it definitely skews younger and it definitely skews lower on the credit scoring spectrum. A lot of times people are drawn to this because they maybe don't have any alternative, or at least they don't have an affordable alternative. Buy now, pay later can work. You just need to be careful about how you use it. I think the best way to use it is to isolate a single large purchase. Like if you can pay $50 a month for a couple of years for a new couch and you get a low or no interest rate, that to me makes more sense than the daily transactions like gas and groceries and food delivery.
I thought it was interesting too with Gen Z, 18 to 28-year-olds, 26% regretted their purchase. So maybe it was like, well, it wasn't time for that new couch, or it wasn't time for that thing that I thought that I saw that I wanted. Did 25% seem high to you for regretting? Does that seem low to you from what before you saw the data?
If anything, sometimes the true cost is higher because we see, for example, half of credit card holders already carry debt from month to month. And when we're talking about people in their 20s and 30s, these are people who have a lot of student debt. And these things do have a way of compounding. It's a little bit of a vicious cycle because sometimes that's why people are drawn to financing alternatives. But we also hear from nonprofit credit counselors, for example, that they're seeing a big influx in people with BNPL debt. Credit cards too, of course, they're not innocent in all this. There's actually a really great industry saying that credit cards are like power tools. They're really useful or dangerous depending on how you use them. I think the same thing pertains to buy now, pay later. I mean, we definitely hear anecdotally about the college student who kind of didn't realize and went on a shopping spree, and it felt like a series of small purchases, and they added up to a bunch of big purchases. You just need to be careful, but it can work. I really feel like the best way to use it is to read the fine print, get a good low or no interest deal on something that you really need, and then maybe it is a viable way to spread out the impact of that couch or TV or refrigerator or something like that.
Yeah. I also wanted to talk about the reasons for using it. 57% saying, they wanted to pay in installments or spread out their cash flow. Obviously, everybody looking for cash flow, it's like, okay, this is a really expensive paycheck, but my next paycheck, I don't have as many commitments. Maybe rent is this paycheck, but the next one isn't. Obtaining a low or no interest rate, 40% of people said they did BNPLs because they wanted to get a low or no interest rate. So could you explain the interest rate structures on these? Like, is it really no interest up front for the shorter term ones, and then the long term ones you do have interest? I just need to know the interest rate structures on these one more time. You went over it earlier.
The short-term plans, the 6-week ones, are typically interest-free. Although you want to double check, but generally speaking, 4 interest-free payments over 6 weeks is one flavor. The other flavor that's increasingly common is the one that's 6 months or 12 months or sometimes even a few years. That one usually does have an interest rate, and it varies widely. Sometimes you can get a really good deal. Maybe it's a merchant promo or a BNPL promo where sometimes it is even interest-free, but a lot of those longer ones, the ones that are 6 months or more, a lot of those are 15%, 20%. I've seen some up to 36%. It really does vary a lot based on the provider, the merchant, your credit score, various factors. These companies have some really interesting underwriting. Affirm says their delinquency rate spikes at 2 a.m. People that are kind of bored late at night, scrolling through their phone, they actually sometimes even selectively decline those kind of purchases. There's a lot of interesting kind of data science that that goes into this. You need to look at the fine print. It's not one size fits all anymore. The installments are fixed, so at least you know what you owe and how many payments it's going to be. But you really do need to shop around and think about the particulars.
We talked with Klarna specifically. We recently did a story about DoorDash and Klarna, a new partnership. Klarna told us, the payments, if you miss a payment, you're restricted from further using it. They told us that 99% of its loans are repaid. Now, I don't know if that's just on DoorDash, but they said, 99% average user owes about $100. So what does happen from a consumer's perspective if you miss a payment?
People have been warning for years about this ticking time bomb of buy now, pay later delinquencies. It hasn't really arrived yet. Companies like Klarna and Affirm actually report lower delinquency rates than credit card lenders. And that's been shocking to a lot of people because some of these providers don't even charge late fees. It typically doesn't affect your credit if you pay late, unless you're so late that it goes to collections. So people say, well, what gives, right? It's actually not the stick. It's not the punishment of the late fee or the credit score damage. It's actually the carrot. As you noted, the ability to continue to use these services has been a remarkable motivator. And that's really surprised a lot of people. You're right. I mean, if you fall behind on these plans, they might not lend to you again. A lot of people like this concept and they keep coming back for more. And that's actually been the most powerful incentive to pay on time.
And if you've never used these before, again, there's tons of brand names for them and you're going to see them. But if you've never used these before, are they responsible for sending you statements? Like, what is their obligation to you to let you know as a lender, like, hey, person who borrowed money from our company, this is what you owe, here's the situation. What are their obligations?
Well, that's changing too. It's kind of like that quip about how there's no Latin word for microwave because they didn't have microwaves in ancient Rome. Buy now, pay later is a new-ish concept. And the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau in the final days of the Biden administration actually passed a rule clarifying that they believed that these should be treated the same way as credit cards. And that meant monthly statements. It meant more about disputes and credit reporting. Now, the new CFPB under President Trump actually rescinded all of that interpretation because it wasn't a law. It was kind of a gray area. It's like, well, what is buy now, pay later? Right now, we're sort of back to a bit of the Wild West that it's mostly outside of the credit reporting system. They're not necessarily beholden to some of the same truth in lending rules. Now, sometimes voluntarily, these companies are complying. And generally speaking, they've gotten better in recent years about things like disputes. But it is sort of a vague concept. And we're not seeing it on credit reports just yet. There are a few pilot programs that are kind of starting to poke around this area, but a lot of it falls to the consumer. You can often set up auto payments. That's a good step to make sure that you're meeting these minimum requirements. But a lot of it does fall to the individual.
So as we get ready to leave here, you've been great. Ted Rossman with Bankrate. Thank you for taking the time to do this. One last thing to kind of put a bow on it. If folks are like, okay, I'm still really not sure like what they are, and I'm still trying to figure it out. And I know we've gone deep dive, Ted, you and I have gone deep dive. The elevator pitch for someone who asks you, what is buy now, pay later? Just kind of put a bow on it for us.
It's installment lending. It's basically a fixed group of payment installments that you're committing in advance, that you're going to make 4 payments of $25 every couple of weeks, and you're going to pay off that $100 item. Or maybe it's a higher dollar amount, maybe it's a longer term, but the fixed installments are key. It's not like a credit card where you can make a minimum payment, you can drag it on for a really long time. Credit cards are not fixed in terms of how much you owe for exactly how long. Buy now, pay later is a group of installments. Think of it as kind of reverse layaway. Maybe back in the day, people put things on reserve at Sears or Toys R Us, and they paid them off in installments, and then they got to take the item home. Buy now, pay later works the same way, except you get the merchandise up front, and then you pay for it later in those fixed installments.
Ted Rossman, analyst at Bankrate. Thank you so much for your time, Ted, and I'm sure we'll be talking again soon. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So again, that was Ted Rossman, Bankrate, just fantastic. They talk with us a lot, and have sent us many emails over the years. You've probably seen Bankrate on like CBS Mornings. They've done interviews with CBS News and a lot of the Channel 6 things that you've seen. And one of the things I really like about that is the headline was 49%. So a lot of people use buy now, pay laters. And just like Ted said, not that you shouldn't use that, but just one of the points of this segment where we kind of go outside of the newscast here in our News on 6 digital studio, we're outside of the newscast, is that we're diving deeper into issues that are relevant to you. I mean, yes, we could sit here and talk about like the S&P 500 and different indices and what's this stock doing and what's that stock doing, but we're really trying to just make it about your pocketbook, your wallet, your digital wallet, and where your money's going. And just so you know where your money's going, and if you use services like these buy now, pay laters, that you know what you're in for. And so that's one of the things that as we come back here weekly, ideally, and maybe more than that as we continue to ramp up here at our News on 6 digital studio, we want to keep it really relevant, really basic for everyone, including me, because again, I'm not a certified financial planner. I was not a mathematics major. These are all some things that I'm becoming an expert like you. I'm becoming an expert on and sharing with you my knowledge and the experts that I am able to interview like Ted. So thank you again for joining us here on this version of News on 6 Digital Studio. We were talking about Your Money Matters, Buy Now, Pay Later with Ted Rossman. This is going to be up on our website, newson6.com. Make sure you check our YouTube channel as well, because we have a lot of great content coming for you, and that's already been posted there. We thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to watch this segment. Have a great week. We'll see you again soon.